Good day, everyone. I am Karen Bonadio, Director of Alumni Relations, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our Fall Alumni Town Hall. While we cannot meet in person, technology allows us to convene virtually, and we appreciate your patience as we navigate this event remotely and apologize in advance for any issues you may experience. This webinar is being recorded and closed captioning is available and can be turned on at the bottom of your screen. Today, I am happy to introduce Dean Doug Elmendorf, Don K. Price, Professor of Public Policy, for this virtual town hall event.
Thank you, Karen. I am delighted to be here for this special town hall for alumni of Harvard Kennedy School with all of you. I'm speaking to you from Cambridge, indeed from the study in my house. Welcome, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever suits your location in the world. I hope that you and your families and friends are well and safe, despite the hard circumstances in many places in the world now. Thank you for joining today's conversation. Thank you, as always, for the many ways you engage with the Kennedy School and support our mission. Our alumni volunteers and donors play an especially important role at this challenging time for the world and for the Kennedy School. Your support is essential for us to thrive and to make a difference in the world. In particular, as you know, many passionate and talented people who want to come to the Kennedy School cannot afford to come on their own, especially today when they're facing personal, professional, and financial challenges from the pandemic. This is why financial aid is critical. Financial aid allows these students to enroll and to learn what they need to become even more effective public leaders, public servants, public problem solvers. It has never been more clear that principled and effective public leadership matter for people's lives. And of course, our students could not be taught well, and our powerful research and outreach could not be conducted well without our outstanding faculty and staff members. Your support empowers them as well. In any single town hall, it is impossible to truly capture the breadth and depth of work at the Kennedy School. But let me offer a few brief examples about what we are doing now to respond to the pandemic, to combat racism and bias, and to slow climate change, three of the most important and pressing public challenges of our time. We are, of course, working to address many other challenges as well, and I'll be happy to talk about those if you would like, in the question and answer period. On the pandemic, we have been vigorously involved in helping public officials around the world respond in ways that protect their people. Our experts are contributing knowledge and solutions regarding public management, economic policy, health policy, information in the media, international relations strategy, and more. As just one example, our program for training mayors around the world, which we run together with Harvard Business School, pivoted immediately in the spring to focus on COVID. And every week, hundreds of mayors and their key staff members joined a succession of faculty members from Harvard and elsewhere to learn what they needed. We work with Boston area health groups to manage the flow of patients. And we're working with finance ministers and other government officials across the globe to manage the combined health and economic stresses. We're capturing some of this work on a dedicated page on our website and sharing it through our regular newsletter. The most recent issue of the Harvard Kennedy School magazine features a collection of our faculty members' thoughts on the implications of the pandemic. Please take a look. We are also, of course, focusing our work on combating anti-Black racism and other systemic injustices based on race, and on ethnicity, and on caste, and other characteristics. At the Kennedy School, fostering a diverse and inclusive community where everyone feels they belong is a matter of basic fairness, consistent with our core moral values. It is also essential to our mission, because recruiting and empowering the best people helps to improve public policy and leadership, because we learn more from people with different perspectives, and because we serve diverse societies and work in diverse groups. We need to keep working to reduce racism and discrimination and bias more generally at the Kennedy School. We are very committed as well to helping to reduce racism in the world. During the past 3 years, we have hired roughly a dozen faculty members whose work addresses race and some aspect of public policy or leadership. For example, Sandra Susan Smith, a distinguished sociologist whom we recruited from the University of California at Berkeley, studies urban issues and especially race in the criminal justice system. She's now the faculty director of our program in criminal justice policy and management. As another example, Marcy Elson, who is a physician and an economist, focuses on inequities in access to healthcare in the United States and developing countries. And we just recruited her to join our faculty as well. Cornell Brooks, the former president of the NAACP, the leading US civil rights organization, has joined our faculty and created the William Monroe Trotter Collaborative for Social Justice, which disseminates research findings to grassroots organizations that would benefit from them. Because of course, public leaders doesn't just mean government leaders, it means people who are leading other public-oriented organizations and groups as well, and so on. I could give other examples. We offer our students about 20 courses and seminars now related to race, racial inequality, criminal justice, or policing. And this fall, we launched a new MPP core course, a required course, to provide a grounding on racism and public policy. These efforts and more are reflected on a new page on our website focused on confronting racism and bias. I hope you take a look at that as well. And the third area I wanted to highlight today is climate change and sustainability more generally. We have an amazing collection of policy expertise and influence at the Kennedy School. As you know, climate change and other environmental degradation threaten human lives, destabilize ecosystems, accelerate biodiversity loss, and damage economies. We are responding to the climate crisis through our research, teaching, and engagement with the world, and also through waste reduction, energy savings, and other changes in our campus operations. We offer about a dozen courses related to climate change policy, and other schools at Harvard offer many more in their own areas of specialization. Our faculty also lead the Harvard Project on Climate Agreements, which has played an important role in international negotiations, an Arctic initiative that focuses on the fallout of climate change in the Arctic region, a sustainability science program that's pushing back the frontier in thinking about sustainability, and more. Altogether, we have more than a dozen faculty members centrally engaged with climate change. And we will be launching next week a new webpage that brings together our work on this subject as well. Of course, our activities around the pandemic, racism, and sustainability are just a part of all the activities underway at the Kennedy School. And in future conversations or later in this conversation, I'd be happy to highlight our teaching, research, and practice related to democracy and responsive public leaders, to national security and international relations, to economic development and growth, to local and state or provincial governance, to technology in the public sector, to human rights, to gender and public leadership, and much more. To leverage the strengths of the Kennedy School, a group of faculty members met over the summer to identify issues where new interdisciplinary, solution-focused efforts of our faculty could have the greatest impact. They identified 4 issues on which they are now working. Let me summarize them for you. The first is the future of work, which addresses workforce development, the precarious nature of modern service sector jobs, racial and gender inequality in the labor market, and other pressing problems of the 21st century workplace. The second issue on which a group of faculty members is focused is the future of democracy and dissent, which encompasses both working within institutions to create better responsiveness to public problems and work in civil society to hold government officials accountable. The third issue on which a group of faculty members is now focused is the new global order, which aims to develop their project aims to develop a post-pandemic global system that is stable and peaceful, that respects the diversity of institutional arrangements around the world, that reaps the gains of cooperation among nations where possible, and that remains true to the values of human rights and democracy. And the fourth issue in this collection of projects is about renovating American communities, which will help local and state leaders mend divisions and address inequities in their communities as they recover from the pandemic. Pursuing these projects and all of the teaching, research, and outreach at the Kennedy School is greatly complicated, of course, by the pandemic. The pandemic has affected operations of the school in two profound ways. One, as you know, is that we have been teaching, learning, working, and communicating remotely for the past 6 months. And we will have to continue to do so for an uncertain number of future months. Creating this virtual Kennedy School has not been easy. It has been very challenging. I'm gratified by how our faculty and staff and students have risen to this challenge. Through their imagination and hard work, we have rebuilt our degree program courses to use technology well, crafted new executive education programs with new pedagogies, developed new ways to interact outside of class and away from our offices, held innumerable Zoom encounters with each other and with guests and far-flung members of our community, and much more. The efforts have been intense, and I think the payoff is becoming clear. These changes are not just good for the school's effectiveness today, they will give us greater flexibility and impact even after we return to campus. The second profound effect of the pandemic on the operations of the school is through the financial losses we have incurred. Executive education has become before the pandemic, not only a key aspect of the school's impact on the world, but also an important source of financial support. And when people stopped traveling in the spring, our executive education essentially shut down. We are now rebuilding an online executive education program with a collection of interesting new courses, and the early reception in terms of both enrollment and course reviews has been very positive. Again, to the credit of our faculty and staff and to the flexibility of the executive education participants. But this rebuilding is a slow process, and the financial losses are weighing heavily on the school. In addition, as some of our degree program students have chosen to take leaves of absence or defer starting their studies, we are receiving significantly less tuition revenue. At the same time, our students and wannabe students have even greater financial needs. So we are imposing a salary and hiring freeze, deferring spending that can be deferred, considering other changes in our operations, and drawing down the cash reserves that we had built up in anticipation of some problem, although we did not predict this particular problem. The summary of this is just that we, like other institutions of higher education, are facing significant challenges, both operationally and financially. But we also have a very, very bright future. I am excited about what lies ahead at the Kennedy School and what we can accomplish, all of us who are part of the Kennedy School, together in the world. It is more important than ever that we attract the best students to the Kennedy School. And financial aid is crucial in that effort. Our alumni and other donors enable us to bring exceptional students to the school and to send them back into the world with the skills to do exceptional public service on behalf of all of us. I am especially grateful to the alumni volunteer leaders who recently completed a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign to raise financial aid funds for students affected by COVID-19. And more broadly, the number of alumni who give financially to the school, contributions that we devote to supporting our students' experiences has doubled over the past few years. And that really warms my heart and the heart of all of us who are here at the school today. Of course, also alumni keep the school strong in many other ways, and I'm very, very appreciative for all of these ways. We look to you to share your expertise and experience in panel conversations. We need you to conduct employer briefings and to host one-on-one career chats with students who are interested in your area of work. We want you to mentor our students or serve as partners for internships, job opportunities, and the NPP's policy analysis exercise. I was delighted by the involvement of a number of you in our orientation activities. Thank you to those of you who had coffee chats with our new students and helped them understand the Kennedy School. I'm also inspired by the ways our alumni are advancing the mission of the Kennedy School in your own professional and personal activities. Some of this engagement is organized by local alumni groups. I want to give a few shout outs. Our DC Alumni Council has been holding forum on the phone Zoom discussions on a variety of racial justice topics, as well as the upcoming US election. Our alumni chapter in France has participated in events related to Black Lives Matter, including an Expats of Color sit-in on Juneteenth. And the Kennedy School New England Alumni Association has worked with the Harvard Decision Science Lab to create a series of behavioral science talks. And I apologize to the groups I can't mention here, but engagement with our mission also happens, of course, individually, not just that organized by these alumni groups. The most recent issue of the Harvard Kennedy School magazine highlights the ways that alumni are addressing public challenges. From Melissa Hortman, mid-career graduate in 2018, who is working to improve government in Minnesota as the Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives. To Kara Myers, who graduated with an NPA ID degree in 2018, who's partnering with farmers in Mozambique to improve nutrition for children. To Tarai Chinyang Mangkopu, who graduated with a mid-career degree in 2019, just last year, who is passionate about building technology that serves users' interests by protecting their privacy. These are just a few of many, many examples. I am inspired constantly by what our students go on to do in the world as our alumni. So I'd love to hear what you are doing and the ways that you are making your communities safer and freer and more just and more sustainably prosperous. I want to wrap up here. Much more I could say about the school, and I look forward to saying in response to your questions, but I want to take your questions. I hope you have a better sense now than a few minutes ago of what is happening at the Kennedy School in these trying times, and of how much your engagement with the Kennedy School and our mission matters. We have so much to do, and I am profoundly optimistic about the role of the Kennedy School in driving positive change across this country and around the world. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dean Elmendorf, for those great remarks. Now we're going to open up to questions. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be posted later online. To ask a question, we ask participants to use the raise hand function. Rachel Crinklaw will notify you when it's your turn to speak. You may experience a short lag time, so please be sure to take yourself off mute and turn your video on when prompted. We would appreciate if you could state your name, degree, and year before you ask your questions. And please remember that all questions must end in a question mark. I'd like to start things off by asking a question one of our participants has already submitted. Doug, how have you attempted to create spaces where students can build deep connection, emotional intimacy, and community so critical to the HCAS experience? And as a follow-up to that, what lessons have you learned from those experiments?
Thank you. That's a perfect question. And I will interpret when you say, what have you done? I will interpret the you as a plural you, because what I'll describe is work that is to the credit of many of our tremendous staff members in our degree programs and student affairs, working with some faculty members and working with students who have been partners in this. I'll describe just a few aspects of what we're doing, and then give a flavor. So part of this was that we recognized early on the importance of the issue you're raising. The Kennedy School is not just a place of participating in class. It is a place of bumping into people, students, faculty members, staff members, and engaging in conversations. And we've talked around Harvard since the spring about how to, we say, structure serendipity. How do you create a structure, a virtual structure, in which some of these serendipitous interactions can happen? My colleagues working with students have done a number of things. I'll give you a few examples. Part of this was in the summer program for the mid-career students and for the fall launch in the Mason program, the faculty and staff overhauled that program to include more community building, more interactive sessions in small groups. And we also built new curricular pieces for the summer that had a focus on community and making connections. So these were sequences on public narrative and policy analysis, but they were designed to incorporate more small group work and interaction and peer coaching. So while there was an official purpose in a curricular sense, the structure was really built to help people create bonds with each other. We also wanted to make sure that our students were having some of the serendipitous engagement with our faculty. Group of faculty members volunteered to teach a whole collection of sessions over the summer. There were a couple of dozen workshop series that were for our incoming students, all the incoming students. Then there were also 3 dozen single sessions that were offered to returning students, so that both the new students and the returning students had a chance to spend time with faculty members in small groups and with each other in these small groups during the summer. We didn't want people to feel stranded or totally alone. I'm told that more than 450 students participated at least once in these events over the summer. I know many participated many, many times. Our colleagues in student affairs also, working with students, designed a different sort of orientation for this year. Again, designed to create small group opportunities for getting to know each other and starting to work together. So we had sessions on exploring community, sessions on anti-racism and allyship, built around breakout rooms. So not just the equivalent of 400 people sitting in the forum, but the equivalent of all of the chats that happen before and after those kind of events in the forum. And that focus on those kinds of interactions also pervades the fall courses. Our faculty members are not teaching just lectures, which are never the best way to teach, but certainly not on Zoom. They're doing more group work with students, again, as a way of teaching a certain material, but also as a way of building this community. We're also, for this fall, rolling out a number of different approaches, and we'll have to see how they work. So I think the verdict is not in, but there's something called Kennedy Connections, in which students put their name on a list, essentially, and then are matched up with other people to get to know them. We've taken our Take a Faculty Member to Lunch and turned it into Take a Faculty Member to Coffee, virtual coffee, recognizing that people may be eating lunch or breakfast or dinner at different times. We are rolling out later this fall, as are other schools at Harvard, online tool called Engage, which we hope will work. I also should say in our career services group, they're making special adjustments to bring students together. They're creating something that I think of as, I think they're calling learning circles. And learning circles are cross-degree programs for students to come together as peers and to learn from each other about what the opportunities are for them in the world. That is a complement to, not a substitute for, the more specific training sessions, career chats, panel discussions, and so on, which Career Services organizes and which they're doing online now. So I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but I thought it was such an important question. It was worth talking about these different ways that we're trying to bring students together. As I say, though, I think we don't know yet which of these will turn out to be most effective and which may unfortunately not work very well. We'll have to see.
Next question comes from Diane Cherry.
Good morning. My name is Diane Cherry. I'm a 1993 MPP graduate. My question is really about sort of the career direction. I feel like, especially today, there's so many options about where you go with your degree. And in some ways it's overwhelming. And I'm seeing that in a lot of the mentorships that I do for students. One of the things that I found really helpful was the Presidential Management Fellowship Program, which gave me an entrance into the government and a very good 24-year career in the federal state government. I was just wondering if that's still something that students are interested in, and what is a way to kind of overcome all the array of choices involved in a career to pursue.
So I think that particular program is one our students are still interested in, but I have colleagues on the call who may know better, and then they should try to weigh in. I think the general challenge you raise is a very important one. I'm not sure though our answer is to overcome it or just help students, I think what you mean, help them navigate through it.
Yeah.
There is, we are the Kennedy School of Government, but for at least a few decades now, we've been speaking about the importance of good public leadership in different sectors of the economy, meaning leadership that is focused on accomplishing public purposes. And that can happen in government. And I, as you may know, I spent most of my career working for the US government. So I believe very much in the importance of government work. But there are also people serving public interest in a whole array of nonprofit organizations, both traditional and new startup organizations. And there are people in the private sector who are playing important public roles. And we have a number of Kennedy School students who are working on public aspects of technology in Silicon Valley and so on. This is a real challenge in the mentoring and advising process. An average year will graduate 600 or so students from the Kennedy School, and they go to something like 550 different employers in 100 different countries. And so there's no single path that serves more than a small number of our students. That's part of why our Career Services Office relies on alumni to help do some of this mentoring, because our team of people, talented as they are, can't possibly know all the things happening in every sector in every country. And so alumni can play a really important role there. And I hope that all of you who are listening and watching here who have not participated in this can offer yourselves to Karen Bonadio and her colleagues a place and role. It's also why we're trying to build up this peer-to-peer engagement that I talked about, because we might have, will have in general at the school, a mid-career student who's spent some time in an area that maybe an MPP student would like to get into. And we're trying to build make those connections easier to form so that students can learn in that way. But it is hard. We have students who come to the school and leave the school interested in a tremendous array of different issues and working in different countries and in different ways. And I think we need to accommodate that. There's a different approach we could take. We could try to be more focused, but I actually think that there are so many ways to fulfill the mission of the school. And we are large enough and I think benefit from the diversity of perspectives and interests, but I don't want to give that up. I think we need to try to help each student as best we can find their own path.
Thanks.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Next question comes from Erica Litch.
Hi, thank you. So students have advocated for many decades to have a mandatory course on race and racism and public policy. So it was very exciting to see this new course, the 2-week mandatory course for MPPs. So my question is twofold. One, what plans are being made to make that course mandatory for all students, including MPAs? So I should have introduced myself. I was an MPA at the Kennedy School 2020. But what plans are being made to make that course mandatory for MPAs, MPIDs, and mid-careers, recognizing, as you've spoken to in previous talks, the importance of engaging in racial equity for all students. And dually, students have long advocated to have an anti-racism training mandatory in orientation, so that the school year is kicked off with a foundation and level setting for all students to be able to talk about their own identities and racial equity in a meaningful way. So I'd love to hear what the plans are to institute both.
Yes, so thank you, Erica. Great questions. Let me start by just recognizing the important role that students have played over the years. Actually, I was a guest last night at the Harvard Club of Boston and talked about the school's work on racism, both internally and in the world. And I noted that that students and some faculty members and some staff members have advocated for many years, built the case for changes at the school, and worked with me and previous administrators to develop and implement these changes. And this is an effort that requires leadership of the deans and others, but isn't more fundamentally a project of the entire community. And the entire community's commitment to it has made a huge difference in where we've gotten so far. You raised an important question about taking this course for MPPs and having other programs require it. As you know, we don't require much specifically of the mid-career students or the two-year MPA students. The MPAID program has a required curriculum, and I believe that the faculty who are teaching in that curriculum this year are working on ways to bring issues of race and ethnicity and caste more into that program, but it's not the same as in the MPP program. We have not decided, not really discussed at length yet whether we should have a requirement of this sort in the other MPA programs, or what the requirement might look like. The natural place to start is an MPP program. This course this fall is being taught, just happened actually, it was an intensive course in the first few weeks of the semester. It was taught by Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Professor Muhammad joined us 4 or 5 years ago, and by Sandra Susan Smith, and Professor Smith just joined us a few months ago. She basically built this course while she was moving across country. So I think we'll need to see, I not even had time to talk with them since the course ended. So we'll need to see how they think it went, what they might do differently, see what student reaction was. And I think out of that, we may end up with a, I don't know, somewhat refined syllabus or different structure for next year in the MPP program. But I hope also from that, we can understand how we might apply this to other programs. I will say there's a hard trade-off in what one requires students to learn. I think traditionally, faculty actually like imposing requirements, and students are, because it's a faculty imposed requirement, students are often more skeptical about requirements. And so this will require, I think, a lot of discussion among the faculty, but also discussion with students. And the MPP core curriculum, which we are overhauling in general now, an important guide for us has been what employers have said they wanted. You know, Kenny School students come, they know this and that's great, but they don't know something else and that's too bad. And so our strong conviction is that our students will be more effective in the world by learning about the scourge of racism and ways to combat that. But we need to think about that carefully in the context of these different programs, because what is best for MPP students may not be the same thing for other students. So I don't know. I think it's, but it's an issue that we will be discussing in the days ahead. I'm sorry, your second question was?
Yeah, my second question was about anti-racism training. So
oh, yes.
Students had for many
yes.
years brought in anti-racism training on their own through their own student organizing, because they felt like the school was not providing, the school provided trainings on race and racism, but that didn't have an anti-racism pedagogy. And so plans, I've been aware, right. And I think other students have plans to bring in Community Change Inc., but there had been no follow through, which was really disappointing to see this fall, given that there had continuously been messaging that that was going to happen. So in terms right. of the kind of foundational setting that happens at the beginning of the year, and for me as an MPA student to be able to really engage with other students as an MPA on, thinking about systems of oppression and our own identities.
Right. So there was a piece of the orientation week this year that was about anti-racism and allyship, taught by people at the school. There has also been ongoing conversation with Community Change Inc. Debbie Isaacson, the Dean of Students, is leading those conversations with some of her staff colleagues and with some students. I believe there is a proposal that is developing that will come to me shortly. I think we are eager to offer training that can effectively change minds and effectively guide different behavior. And Community Change Inc. has a very good reputation for that, which is why we've engaged with them. But we want to make sure that the training we do works. There are aspects of this for students. There are aspects of this for staff and faculty who also have had trainings of various sorts. There's research literature on training, which Yours Bennett, who's the academic dean, is actually quite knowledgeable about, which Robin Chapman, who's our associate dean for diversity, inclusion, and belonging, is knowledgeable about. And they're trying to apply the lessons of that research as we build this. So I'm sorry as well that we have not been able to make faster progress, but this is very much on the agenda, and progress is being made.
Thank you. Next question comes from Karen Aronson.
I can't start the video, but I guess I can start the audio. Hi.
Okay. Hello.
Let's see if I can. It says I'm unable to start video. I'm Karen Aronson, MPP 1972. I'll push start video. There it goes. Hi.
Hello.
Okay. Sorry. Greetings. Thanks for all you're doing on so many new fronts. Another area of upheaval has been how people get and receive and process information. The media and social media have seen huge changes, and whether or not government and public policy people can function depends on whether they can get information out to people. I wonder if you have anything taking place on this front.
Yes, we do indeed. Thank you, Karen, for the question. As I recall, Karen, you had a long career at the New York Times. Yes, so you and others on call are interested should go to the website for our Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy. There's a whole set of work going on. For example, there's a project on misinformation and disinformation being led by a set of people being led by Joan Donovan, and this project is playing a very active role in helping people in the media understand what is happening around them and to them, and trying to improve the quality of information that is flowing. They have been very, very busy this year, and I think will be increasingly busy in the coming months. And we're proud of that work. There is also a new publication, an online publication from the Kennedy School called the Misinformation Review. It is being edited by Matt Baum on our faculty and others. It's a very fast turnover, I'd say, online. A lot of submissions and a lot of attention to papers they have published online. And this is about the flow of information in the world and the flow of misinformation in the world, and what can be done to increase the flow of real information and decrease the flow of misinformation. Our other faculty members, Tom Patterson and others, are continuing to do research that gets picked up. This is not just research for academic journals for next year or the year after. These are findings that are promulgated in real time about what's happening. Tom particularly studies information around elections. So a whole set of things, and I think the Shorenstein Center web page is probably the best entree into that. And if you have particular comments or suggestions for those folks who are doing those projects, and I'd encourage you to just to write to them. I think they're very interested, and I think your perspective in particular, Karen, would be helpful to them.
And do you teach your students in classes how to communicate, how to tweet, how to not tweet, whatever?
We do, and in fact, our students have been clamoring for courses in communications. I think almost every year of the 5 years I've been dean, we've increased the number of communications courses we offer in response to student demand. And some of that is writing in a sort of memo, government memo, the sense sort of I would have written, but it's also giving speeches, it is writing op-eds, it is a whole array of modern communications approaches, and I think the students are right to want that. We tend to teach that in small classes so that people get a lot of practice doing that, and I hope they will leave the school, as I often say, with both the principles of what's right and wrong and effectiveness at doing what's right. So thank you, Karen. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Next question comes from Phil Cronin.
Speaking, Phil Cronin, MPP 1996. So to put this in context, I have my older daughter graduated from the Pingree School, a private high school in Massachusetts this June. And back earlier this year, they put out on social media, you know, the Pingree School supports Black Lives Matter, then we support our students of color. And they got slammed pretty hard by the students of color who were currently enrolled at Pingree and who had graduated from Pingree. So the administration had a much, much different view of the students of color experience there than the students did. So you talked a lot about going forward here at the Kennedy School with the new classes and things. So my question is the Kennedy School looking back and talking to alums who are students of color, or not people of color, you know, grads, alums, are they getting their experience in to see if it matches what the Kennedy School thought it was, to get their experience and whether it was good or bad?
Yes, that's a terrific question, Phil. Thank you. So I've now been dean for almost 5 years, and I spend a fair amount of time talking with students. It's a big class, so I don't get to know everybody, of course, but I spend a fair amount of time. But also, more importantly, I hear the collection of reports from faculty and staff members who are talking with students. And there's no doubt that for many of our Black students and for other students, underrepresented races or ethnicities, national origins in some cases, the Kennedy School has not been as welcoming a place as we ought to be. And the stories that I have heard stand out in my mind and guide the work that we are doing. And it's not just me, these are the stories that our Dean of Students has heard and that many other people at the school have heard. And so I think it's been a mistake and a missed opportunity that we have not made the school as welcoming as we should. And it's a mistake on moral grounds, and it's a missed opportunity in terms of our ability to accomplish our mission. And so one of the first things I did when I became dean was to appoint a task force of students and faculty and staff to develop an agenda on diversity and inclusion for the school. And we're working our way through these, following that agenda and many other ideas that have come up. I don't think this is a single solution. I think we have to do a lot of different things, and we're trying a lot of things. I will say one of the alumni groups that I am in regular contact with is the Black Alumni Association. I spent an hour or more on a Zoom call maybe a month ago or so, talking about the things we're doing at the school, being pressed by alumni about things that they think we should be doing that we're not yet doing. So the feedback from both current students and students who have come before is very important in driving the school. And I said in my comments at the Harvard Club of Boston last night that there's a ongoing, always a tension in educational institutions between faculty members and deans and so on, who tend to have sort of long views and think that universities move very slowly, and students who have, for obvious reasons, fairly short horizons and want problems fixed now. And I said it in my comments, in response to a question last night, that I think it's a constructive tension in this case, because some of the important things that we're doing at the school, like hiring faculty members, that really will drive the intellectual output of the school and student experiences in the years ahead, it takes a long time to do. So searches and some cluster searches that ended over the summer really started a few years ago. And I explain that to students. But the student pushback is also very useful because the students say, look, we want these problems solved now. And that reinforces a sense of urgency. And so I think the students have had an important role in explaining how things look, in offering ideas for things we can do differently, and in emphasizing the urgency of those changes. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Next question comes from Santiago Crujeras.
Okay. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Santiago Crujeras. I'm a Harvard Alumni Association elected director and a graduate of the Kennedy School from Leaders in Development in 2006. It's a great pleasure to see you again, Doug, Dean Elmendorf. I had the opportunity and the honor to welcome you and your wife in Mexico a few years ago. And anyways, I have a couple of questions concerning the international students community who actually started their programs a couple of weeks ago. And as we all know, many of the students who accepted their offer for this semester are very concerned in regards to the F1 and J1 visas, depending on their cases. So basically, I would like to ask you if you are considering the possibility to make the spring semester hybrid, prioritizing international students to take at least one class in order to comply with the F1 visa status, and if you are considering to create a summer optional course for international students so they may comply with the OPT and CPT time requirements. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Santiago, and thank you for your hospitality in Mexico. The answer is yes, we are right now considering a wide range of possibilities for the spring semester, and the implications of these different options for visa eligibility and for CPT and OPT eligibility is very high in our minds. Those who don't know, CPT and OPT are essentially ways of working in this country connected to an academic program. And so this has been an important aspect of the Kennedy School experience for a number of our students who come from outside the United States. As I think you all know, almost half of Kennedy School students come from outside the United States. We're one of the most international schools at Harvard. Also, as I think you know, Harvard University under President Backhouse direction led this successful effort that ultimately involved hundreds of universities across the country to roll back a change in immigration rules that was imposed over the summer without legal basis, as the government ultimately conceded. So these issues are very much on our minds. I don't know what we're going to do in the spring yet, though. That's the natural follow-up question. There are competing issues here, right? So fundamentally, we need to keep everybody safe and healthy, and that everybody includes our students and our staff and our faculty and our neighbors in Boston. We also need to be effective at teaching and research and the outreach we do to the world. So those goals can come into some tension. We can't give up on safety and health, but we need to find ways to accomplish that second goal as well. The other tension here is the timing of any decision. From a health perspective, and it'll be good to wait in deciding about the spring till we see what's working at Harvard and at other colleges and how the disease is progressing in the world and so on. But for planning purposes, it would be good not to wait. It'd be good to announce as soon as we can what our plans are. And so we're wrestling with that tension as well. But I just want to assure you that the concerns of our international students, which I knew in the spring, but were brought home even more clearly during these very hard few weeks in July, are very much in our minds.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question comes from Claire Doyle Dowd.
Hi, Claire. I think you're muted, Claire. My lip reading is not that good.
Yes, Claire, you're on mute. If you want to write your question in the chat, I can read it.
I should have said also to Santiago, and I'll say to all of you while we're waiting, that the Kennedy School has, for many years, attracted really wonderful students from Mexico. In particular, we have a very active alumni group in Mexico. My wife and I had a chance to meet with alumni in both Mexico City and Monterrey in a trip a few years ago. And so that is one of the places where we want to make sure we keep drawing very talented students to the Kennedy School.
Oh, excellent. Claire wrote, I think the executive education is excellent. Can you explain how you can build the KSG brand through this option?
Yes, thank you, Claire, that's a good question. We now draw to the Kennedy School about 4,000 students a year, in a normal year, 4,000 students a year for executive education. They don't learn as much as students who come for an entire year or two, but they can learn some very valuable things. And they are in positions right now, usually of influence, and they go back and literally the next week or the next month, they're putting to use what they learned at the Kennedy School in being more effective in their roles. So this is a wonderful direction of impact for the school in terms of accomplishing our mission of making the world a better place. I think it's also good for the reputation of the Kennedy School. Our alumni as a group include both those who have graduated with degrees and those who have been in executive education. Some of our executive education alumni are very loyal to the school. And just, I think, in their own roles, they will deploy new ideas, bring new perspectives, and they will say, I learned this at Harvard Kennedy School. And that message gets around in the groups of people with whom they work. And we end up with future applicants to executive education programs or to the degree programs who will say, I learned about the Kennedy School, or I knew about it, but I understood how valuable it would be for me to learn at the Kennedy School from this person who I work for or work with or got to know in the course of our work together. And so when I travel, and when I used to be able to travel in the world, and when I will travel again in the world, I meet with people who've been to executive education programs as well as people who have degrees. So I think their own activities and what they bring from the Kennedy School to those activities naturally helps to reinforce in many people's minds the value of the Kennedy School. I would also say on a narrower basis, we try to construct a set of executive education classes that can fit together in various ways. So some that build on other classes, some that are sort of complements to other classes. So we're trying to enable, I think this will be more and more the way of the future, trying to enable people to build, to find something between a degree or just one exec ed class, finding ways to build a collection of exec ed courses that fit together. And so part of what we're doing every time we teach a class to some students, exec ed, is encouraging them to come back to learn other things that will help them. And so there's a little bit of within the group building of our reputation, but then I think a much broader building of the reputation as well. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. And our last question comes from Rohan Parekh. You're on mute.
Hello, dear Elmendorf. I'm MPID class of 2018. My question actually builds on Santiago's previous question, especially for international students. I've recently heard anecdotally, of course, that the overall scholarship situation and financial aid situation for international students has been affected. For instance, the Joint Japan World Bank scholarship that I was on has apparently discontinued the partnership with MPID. So I just wanted to understand a bit about the efforts that the school is making to kind of bring more resources in to subsidize the fees for incoming students. And the second one was more around the changes in the admission in the admission process and policies around the admission process. For instance, I know some of my some of the potential applicants are facing issues taking GRE, GMAT. So are there certain like changes in the deferral policy that this school has considered? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rohan, for both those parts of the question. On the first question about financial aid, yes, I'm very concerned about the effects of economic problems and the resulting budget stringency in many of the organizations that support students at the Kennedy School. I spent some time talking with some of them recently to do all I can to encourage them to continue these programs. Beyond that, the school tries to fill in with unrestricted funds, much of which are given by alumni who have the capacity to do so. We try to fill in the gaps in what's being offered outside the school and where there are endowed fellowship programs at the school, which there are some. But there are a lot of gaps. And the unrestricted funds that we have don't go as far as I would like them to go. David Elwood made it a priority in his fundraising to garner funds for financial aid, and I've done the same thing. I did a round of calls, for example, at the beginning of the summer with donors to the longstanding friends of the school, and emphasized the importance of their helping out a little more now because we see this extra need of students. So we're doing what we can do. I've also agreed to some extra funding this year for students who started the year with a sort of financial support that they thought was safe and there, and then turns out it's not there because of some problem. And there's always at least some cases of that, but we expect there'll be more this year, and we've set aside more funds to do that. But as I say, it's hard. We're drawing down at a very rapid rate right now the cash reserves that we've built up. So I can't do all that we would like to do. But I will just say that I'm not trying to twist arms exactly, but it is just a fact that they have the support from alumni and others to the school financially enables us to provide more of the support for students. The second part of your question about test scores, applications, and so on, we are, I think there's two issues here. There's an ongoing issue, which is what sort of evidence should the school look for in applications of the abilities and commitments that we want our students to have, and whether test scores are an important aspect of that, or an unimportant aspect, or a counterproductive aspect. That's a question of ongoing importance, and one that we're doing more analysis of this year. There's also a short-term question, which is, well, right now, taking tests is like everything, is more complicated for many people than it used to be. And what accommodations should we make in this upcoming admissions cycle? And that's a question that we are trying to resolve over the next few weeks. And we don't have a resolution yet, but we're trying to recognize the real constraints that people face. And I hear this every day. Students write to me, prospective students write to me, faculty and staff members write to me. A lot of people struggling with hard things, and I really want to do all that I can do as the dean to help out. I also want to give students, though, prospective students, a chance to show what they can do. And for some students, showing that they doing well on standardized tests is a way to say that, look, we should not worry about the fact that they had bad grades in class or something else. There were particular reasons for that, and they can show us that a bit. So trying to find ways. I think part of what we're doing in the admissions process now is to read applications in ways that give applicants multiple chances to show, multiple ways of showing what they can do. To not make this say, oh, you got that wrong, so that's an X, but to look holistically. And so the question is, how do test scores, both under these circumstances and then say in the longer term, how do they fit into that? We have a terrific new person heading up, we call enrollment services, Oliver Street. We recruited him from a different university, and it's a new position. And the idea of creating the position, in Debbie Isaacs's mind, in my mind, was to have a little more bandwidth for strategic thinking about how to do this as best as we can. And this goes back to the very first question, the very first issues about how we can make the school a more welcoming place for students who come from, and for faculty and staff who come from non-traditional backgrounds. And that's so important to the effectiveness of the school in the future. So we're working on it. Thank you.
Thank you all alumni who joined today. We look forward to keeping you engaged in future months. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email the general alumni mailbox at alumni@hks.harvard.edu. We'd be happy to review them and pass them on to the dean. And please visit our website for the most up-to-date school news and events. Stay healthy, everyone. Thank you.
Good to see you all. Bye-bye.